This is Career Juice, where we talk to real people with real jobs and get all the juice that it takes for them to succeed in the careers that they chose. I'm your host, Tiffany Yard, author of How to Wine with Your Boss, and the owner of Motovino, an education platform that pairs professional development training with really fun programs in wine. Today, we're talking with Shaina Lampkins, benefit authorizer for the Social Security Administration, and also an editor at large for a digital magazine once upon a time. Let's get started. So, Social Security Administration, that's not where you started.
No.
Where did you do this editor-in-large work? What magazine was that?
This was for an online magazine called Boys and Clothes.
So you did press releases, you handled a lot of the content.
Right, mostly content and interviews.
What are the biggest lessons and skills that you picked up from that role?
I feel like more than anything was working with like 8 different women and the personalities and having to get through that.
Okay, the politics.
Yeah. Navigating the industry. Like, you'd be surprised who's paying attention to you. You know, who's watching what you do, who's copying your content, who's, you know, doing the same interviews as you, you know.
Now, getting to the Social Security Administration, what was that process like?
Altogether, I've been working for the government for about 12 years in August. And one of the things I wanted to get into a federal agency that had more history and more foundation. Someone's gonna be like, you love working there? I do. I love working there. I love what I do. There's so many things that Social Security offers that people just don't know, and they don't realize they can take advantage of it. And when you're able to provide someone that information or able to facilitate those changes and correct someone's work, or, you know, and it makes a difference for someone. It makes Christmas when there wasn't a Christmas before.
A typical day at the Social Security Administration, right? What is that like?
There's so many different things that you can do. Prior to becoming a benefit authorizer, I was a customer service representative. As a benefit authorizer, it's a little different. You don't deal with people. You kind of just come in and you are working cases, you know, issues that might arise on a case. Awards, you know, people who come in and apply, you're actually awarding them their benefit.
I want to join the government in some facet, in some way. What's the first step that they should take?
Start a USA job. You gotta have a profile, you have to build it up, has to make sense, because, you know, there's people that tell me that, you know, before, like, I would send people my resume, like, look, this is the description I have. I don't know what you got going on. And it made the difference from them being called for an interview and them not, so.
And you also are juggling a lot of other projects, which includes a small business that you have here in New York. How the hell are you managing home, work, and then your passion?
I don't know. I try to just make the time. You know, every minute counts. You know, sometimes date night isn't really date night. Sometimes date night is, we'll watch Seinfeld together. As far as like my passions, I gotta get in where I fit in. I love cooking. I like bringing people pleasure from that. I like orchestrating an event around it and seeing people enjoy themselves.
So for someone who's out there knowing that they have to, you know, still have a 9-to-5, still have a day-to-day job, what do you tell them to make it work with both? How do you do that?
The first thing, and something I always tell myself, is that comparison is a tool of the devil. Nothing is original. There's somebody doing what you do. There's about 1,000 other people doing what you do. And you can't look at what they're doing and gauge that on what you should be doing. You know, take your time. I mean, one thing that I saw in working for Social Security, that there's a lot more Black women at the top than I thought. And that was so encouraging for me to see. You know, before the Obama administration left, the head was a Black woman. And seeing that says you can do it too.
How do you deal with the dynamics of the stickiness of government work? Because everyone knows there's a stigma with that.
Perception is everything. Perception is everything. You know, my job right now, we don't have a dress code. Aside from what you wear, it's how you carry yourself. And people definitely pay attention to that working in the government. Like, first impressions are everything. You know, you sit, you meet with someone, that meeting is going to carry over your whole government career.
And the power of relationships is what's going to get you to the next level. So
Absolutely.
Is it easy to move around once you're inside?
I would say yes.
What are some of the hardest lessons you had to learn, specifically working for the job you have now?
Don't take anything personal. I'm not ever going to let something that happens at work take on and manifest personally. You know, if you get a bad review or a bad report, or your supervisor decides to talk to you more than once about something, it's not something that you should hold against them personally.
And whatever they're doing is really designed to just, again, push the agenda forward.
My supervisor was, I guess, anal about certain things. And it would be annoying, the things she would call me in for. In hindsight now, getting to this new position, like everything she said and everything she did, I'm thankful for, because it set me up.
For success, yeah.
Yeah.
Even I have questions.
Listen, I can't take an Uber to work without someone saying, you Social Security building? I have questions. Like, oh, boy, I have to put in the actual address. If I put Social Security, it's going to be like, oh, you work there? How do I get Social Security number for a family? Like, okay.
What type of advice would you give the 21-year-old version of yourself if you had to look back now?
If I had to look back and give advice to myself, it would be to not get comfortable. Like, girl,
should have
reached
shot.
Reach for them stars from now. Stop waiting.
So, what's one of the greatest pieces of advice that you've ever gotten?
Make sure the guy likes you way more than you like him.
In the workplace and otherwise.
How do I deal with difficult personalities? I don't know.
I don't.
Some people are difficult because they make that choice. Once again, you can't take it personal.
Right.
And you can choose. Like, I'm a firm believer in choosing what you give energy to. Some of us aren't lucky enough to be, in Crown Heights around gentrification and get good liquor stores. How does the regular person navigate wine in their typical liquor store?
Okay, so now if we're talking about liquor stores and not a wine store,
right?
One thing you have to recognize that a liquor store is going to have the most popular of everything. Mm-hmm. So you're going to have your spirits, you're going to have the things in between, and you're going to have wine. The wine is going to be usually a value wine because, again, that's what sells the best and it's the most popular item. And so you won't have the same traditional rules that would apply at a wine store on how to shop. Go. And it's going to be likely, $10, $9 value, Syrahs, Merlots, things that are really soft, so usually soft and sweet. Mm-hmm. If you really want to shop for a good wine and learn a little bit in the mix, you find a wine store, a place that specializes in it. And that shopping is a little different because usually it's organized two ways. Mm-hmm. When you walk in, it's usually going to be like a nice little stand where what they want you to buy first is like right in your face. Right. And then when you go down the aisles, the easiest way in this country for folks to identify with wine is by geography. Mm-hmm. So you'll have the Spain in one aisle, you have Australia in another, the US stuff, and then it'll be organized then by price. Highest rows, break the bank. Lowest rows, good for sangria. Right. You like to stay somewhere in the middle because then you'll find things around $15 to $20 in that range, things you can afford. And of course, there's always a real good wine person there to kind of point you in the right direction for your palate.
What would you choose? Like, what's a safe bet if you had to go with value wine?
So a type. Chardonnays are always easy because they'll always taste decent. Right. Anything bubbly, anything a little effervescence is always fun. You always throw some fruit in it and it'll taste good. Right. So anything that you can actually kind of finesse when you get home, you're pretty good with. But I like to stay more so on the white wines from that perspective.
When you have to go through the interview process, what are one of the hardest thing I find about the interview process is that dreaded, well, do you have any questions for me? What am I going to ask you? What are some questions that you rely on when you're asked that question?
It's always one of those questions or places in the interview process where people do get tripped up, along the lines of, so what do you do really bad? Right. Nothing, or else I wouldn't, why would I tell you, I would say that really good questions are ones that engage the interviewer, and it really forces them to get introspective and start thinking before they speak to you. And that feeling alone is what you want to leave them with, something that makes them think and say, oh my God, she really cares about me. How interesting she was able to do that through an interview. And that question is usually along the lines of, one, if you know their job, being able to see their job description ahead of time and saying, oh, I know from what I researched that some of the things that you do include A, B, C, and D. What's that like? What are some of the most exciting aspects of that role? Two, if you don't have that luxury, you can then ask some questions like, well, I'm in this role. My question is, what will success look like for this role in, say, 6 months? Usually saying what this role will look like in a year is a little bit far-fetched and unrealistic, but someone will likely check in with you. A supervisor will say, in a few months, well, here's how you're doing. And then, or again, force them to sit back and think about it if they don't already know. And they're likely to be happy that you're forward thinking already. Like, how can you add value? And that's the kind of message you want to leave. Well, this has been another episode of Career Juice. That was the juice. So glad you joined us. Tune in every Wednesday at 7 p.m. for more career talk and more really good wine. See you soon.